Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a paradox, one that I think really defines modern leadership. We're always told, surround yourself with brilliant people, hire the experts,
Get good advice.
get good advice. And yet, if you really look at some of the biggest strategic failures out there, they almost always happen when you have groups of super intelligent people in the room.
Right. It's fascinating.
There's this quote that it cuts right to the heart of it for me. If you want to make the wrong decision, ask everyone. We hire experts to make us stronger, right? To fill our blind spots. But so often, surrounding ourselves with all these voices, it just leads to noise, to confusion, and worst of all, just paralysis.
That's the central question for this deep dive. Why does seeking guidance, which feels like the most responsible thing to do, so often dull our ability to actually act?
Yeah.
And we've pulled from a really interesting stack of sources here. On one hand, we've got foundational social psychology. We're talking diffusion of responsibility, classic groupthink.
The big ones.
The big ones. And we're going to contrast that with the real bleeding edge of decision science. Computational models for collective intelligence, specifically something called the Meta-CNM model.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our mission here is to find that fine line between smart, strategic collaboration.
The kind that makes you better.
Exactly. And on the other side, accidentally just giving up your leadership. We need a framework, for using expert input to sharpen your own judgment, not just replace it.
Let's start with that first step, that moment of transition.
In any growing business.
Yes. The subtle shift from bringing on complementary expertise to, real dependency.
A founder hiring an amazing CFO, for example, or a top-tier legal advisor. That feels like a sign of maturity, not a problem.
And it is, at first. You're leveraging skills that aren't your core competency. You're paying someone to bring a specialist lens to a problem you already get, in general.
The danger is that the process starts to change, doesn't it?
It's insidious. So instead of asking, okay, what do I know about this, and how does this expert input change my course?
The question becomes, what are my advisors going to think about this?
Exactly. The external input starts to come before your own internal reflection.
And that's when your own leadership capacity, that muscle, it just starts to atrophy.
Let's stick with that analogy. The founder and the brilliant CFO.
Yeah, draw that out for us.
So initially, that CFO is a huge force multiplier. But what if the founder stops, actively reading the dense financial reports herself?
She just relies on the summary.
She relies on the high-level summary. She makes decisions based on the recommendation alone. Pretty soon, she actually loses the ability to explain her own strategic position.
So she can't articulate why the company is making a certain investment without, having the CFO in the room to explain it for her.
Precisely. She owns the outcome, but she's accidentally outsourced the entire thinking process. The expert isn't sharpening her judgment anymore. They're standing in for it.
And that transition is so dangerous because it feels like responsible management.
It feels like delegation. But it's not. It's abdication.
Okay, so that's at the individual level. But this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because when leaders scale this up, when they make the mistake of asking everyone.
Yes. They don't just risk dependency. They are actively inviting these powerful, well-documented psychological failure modes into the room.
These aren't just random mistakes.
No, these are predictable, systemic errors that thrive in groups.
So let's start with the big one. It sounds clinical, but it has huge organizational risk. Diffusion of responsibility.
Diffusion of responsibility, or DOR. It's basically the social physics of large groups.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's the phenomenon where a person is just less likely to feel personal accountability or to take action when other people are present. You just assume someone else is responsible or someone else has already acted.
Go, wait, that seems completely backward. If I pay 5 highly skilled people to advise me on a massive risk, shouldn't I be safer? Aren't more eyes better?
Intuitively, yes, but psychologically, no. In that advisory group, DOR immediately leads to decreased individual contribution.
Social loafing.
It's the direct cause of social loafing. That's the tendency for people to just put in less effort when they're working in a group. I mean, why should I stress over the details if the person next to me is getting paid the same to worry about it?
It's the group version of assuming someone else on the flight checked the wing flaps.
Exactly that. And it gets much more serious. DOR is what underpins moral disengagement in organizations.
How so?
Well, the division of labor lets people focus very narrowly on their own tasks task and just ignore the bigger picture. They forget their moral or professional duty to speak up about a huge risk.
The "I was just following orders" defense.
That's the historical endpoint. The responsibility for the final outcome is spread so thin that no single person feels the weight of the ethical cost.
And the classic illustration of this is the bystander effect.
The most specific type of door. So psychologists Darley and Latane did this foundational experiment back in 1968. They staged a seizure,
Oh, I know this one.
and they measured how often people intervened based on how many other people they thought were watching.
And the results are just startling.
They are. 85% of people intervened when they thought they were alone, but when they believed 4 other bystanders were watching, only 31% did something.
Wow.
The mere presence of others just kills the impulse to help.
So just by adding more advisors to a room, you can accidentally decrease the chance that any one of them will flag a career-ending problem.
You are actively disincentivizing individual responsibility.
Okay, so that's door. That's about avoiding responsibility. What happens when the group decides they all want to agree with each other?
Well, that's when groupthink takes over. Irving Janis defined it as the desire for harmony, or just for concurrence,
Yeah.
that completely overrides a realistic look at other options.
It's when the pressure to agree beats critical thinking.
It just crushes it. And it shows up in a few key ways that absolutely kill innovation. First, you get this illusion of invulnerability.
The feeling that the group can't fail.
Right, which encourages just massive risk-taking. Then you get closed-mindedness, you start stereotyping your opponents or outside experts as, weak or biased or just plain stupid.
And what's the mechanism that actually polices the group? The thing that shuts down the useful arguments?
That's the really toxic part, the pressures toward uniformity. So you see people censoring themselves,
Right.
which creates a false illusion of unanimity. Silence is taken as agreement.
And if someone does speak up.
Then you get direct pressure. They're accused of being disloyal. And worst of all, you get these self-appointed mind guards.
Mind guards.
People who actively shield the leader and the group from any information that might disrupt the consensus.
So if you connect all this together, this enforced harmony is terrible because the top jobs, the senior positions, they require independent thought. But these dynamics just produce yes men.
And yes men are the death of innovation.
Okay, so the psychological evidence is just. It's stacked against asking everyone. If our brains are this prone to failure in groups, the only way out must be to bring in tools that aren't human, like data or algorithms.
That's the exact pivot point in our sources. The whole concept of collective intelligence suggests that a solution you get from the entire collective can be better than the single best idea from any one person in that group.
But the challenge is how to aggregate all that flawed human input correctly.
Right.
Because just taking the average opinion, that only works if your experts are all equally good and think differently, which, with biased humans, is almost never the case.
Never. And that's where this advanced decision science comes in. Our sources talk about a new algorithmic solution based on something called contextual multi-armed bandits, or CMMA.
Okay, that name is...
It's a mouthful. They call it the meta-CM approach. The name is dense, but the idea is actually really simple and profound.
Wait, hold on a second. For our listeners who don't spend their day modeling neural nets, what does a contextual multi-armed bandit actually do? How is it smarter than just averaging votes?
Think of it like the ultimate unbiased manager. It's running constant experiments. So instead of trying to guess which advisor is the single best expert, which is what older models tried to do,
Right.
MetaCAB learns the best linear combination or the best way to aggregate the advice from all the experts at the same time. It teaches itself how to weight each person's input based on the specific context of the problem.
So it's not picking the winner. It's building a winning team of opinions for each decision. It uses all the inputs as a sort of meta-context to predict the best outcome.
And in doing that, it mathematically counteracts our systematic human biases. But here's the most incredible part of this research.
Go on.
The algorithm doesn't just ignore the experts who are underperforming.
Wait, so if I have an advisor who is consistently wrong, who always argues for option B when A is the right move, the algorithm doesn't just dismiss them.
Absolutely not. It sees that the consistently wrong expert is still providing a predictable signal. It learns to mathematically invert that advice.
No way.
Yes, it essentially uses the input of the person who's always wrong as a powerful indicator for which action to avoid.
That is genuinely fascinating. It turns failure into predictive data. It means every opinion, even the one that seems totally wrong, has value if you know how to weigh it.
Exactly.
So what breaks this beautiful mathematical system?
Polarization. When you have disagreeing clusters of experts who all think alike, high correlation within the factions, it creates redundancy.
So if everyone in Team A thinks X and everyone in Team B thinks Y, you really only have 2 data points, even if you ask 20 people.
You've got it. And that redundancy weakens the model's potential to find a better combined solution.
So whether we're talking about an algorithm or a human brainstorming session, the goal isn't just to gather inputs. It's to gather divergent, non-redundant inputs. Homogeneity is the enemy.
Which raises the big question, right? How do we apply this? How do we build our actual human advisory systems to be anti-groupthink from the ground up?
What's the practical playbook?
Well, the architect of groupthink theory, Irving Janis, he came up with clear structural ways to prevent it. First and foremost is the devil's advocate.
Assigning someone to argue against the consensus.
Yes, but with a critical rule.
Hmm.
It has to be a different person for each meeting.
Why is rotating the role so important?
Because if it's the same person every time, they just become the resident contrarian. The group stops hearing the argument and just dismisses the person. Rotating the role makes the conflict feel like part of the process, not a personal agenda.
Smart. What else?
The role of the leader is paramount. You have to assign the task without expressing your own opinion first.
So you don't anger the group.
Exactly. And the best leaders, to really avoid influencing the outcome, they even absent themselves from the critical early meetings. That's a shift from a closed style to an open style leadership.
That sounds almost identical to what President Kennedy did during the Cuban Missile Crisis after the Bay of Pigs disaster.
It's the classic case study in what's called vigilant appraisal. Kennedy learned the hard way about groupthink. So during the missile crisis, he explicitly structured dissent.
Oh.
He invited outside experts to share their views. He encouraged his core team to discuss options with trusted people outside the group to break the consensus bubble.
And he stayed away.
And, crucially, he deliberately stayed absent from key meetings to avoid having his own high-stakes opinions sway the group. He forced them to think independently.
That just reinforces the huge value of divergence. Not just different skills, but real diversity of thought and background.
It's instrumental. Studies actually show that a diverse team of problem solvers can outperform a team made up of only the so-called best problem solvers.
Why is that?
Because the best ones tend to think alike. They offer redundant solutions. Diversity reduces that correlation and unlocks better outcomes, just like the MetaCM model showed us.
Which brings us all the way back around to the true purpose of seeking advice. If the goal isn't just to get the answer, what should a real advisory relationship look like?
Well, the goal cannot be simple expertise transfer. It has to be capacity development.
Meaning?
The most valuable advisors, they resist the temptation of scenario A, which is just giving the quick answer. That's fast, but it creates that dependency we talked about.
So what's scenario B?
Scenario B is teaching the founder the framework. So the founder asks, should I hire an engineer or invest in marketing? And the advisor doesn't give the answer. They respond with a thinking tool. They say, what would have to be true for marketing to be the right move right now?
So the founder has to work through the framework themselves. They own the process, not just the decision.
Exactly. They've grown their own strategic capability. The expert's real job is to strengthen the leader's ability to solve the next 10 problems without them.
So this deep dive, it really gives us a clear roadmap. Mass, unstructured consultation. It paralyzes you, it dulls your own judgment, and it drives you straight into these predictable psychological traps, like diffusion of responsibility and groupthink.
But intentional, diverse, and structurally rigorous advisory relationships, the ones that recognize the mathematical value of disagreement, like the meta-CMAB approach, they unlock true collective intelligence.
And, crucially, they sharpen the leader's own decision-making muscle.
The expert who makes you more capable is the only one worth paying for.
And so we leave you with this final, provocative thought. The true measure of exceptional advising is not how indispensable the advisor becomes, it is how capable the leader becomes. So what specific practice, a rotating devil's advocate, a structured absence from a meeting, offering a framework instead of an answer, what can you adopt this week to encourage dissent and challenge your own group's illusion of unanimity?